Hello, YouTube. I'm Andrew Does Hair. You can find my work on Instagram at Andrew Does Hair. This is my client Thomas. He owns a barbershop in Orange County called Laylo. It's a very cool, hip little spot. You should check it out. Thomas is a barber, as you would imagine, and oftentimes when you're the barber, you're kind of the last one to get a haircut. And for this reason, Thomas opts for a haircut that he doesn't have to style very much, that he doesn't have to cut very frequently. So he's typically in the chair every, I'd say, 2 to 3 months. Most people kind of think intuitively that a shorter, cleaner, tighter haircut is going to last longer, but it's actually kind of the opposite. The cleaner and tighter you go, the more quickly your haircut falls apart and the faster you have to trim it up again to upkeep the look. So by doing something that's a little bit longer, a little bit messier, you actually can kind of maintain the same feeling of your haircut for longer. So what you're looking at here is about, I'd say 4 months grown out. This was longer than usual for him. But the haircut that we're going to fit on him today is something that I've seen on Ryan Gosling. In fact, a couple years ago, GQ put out an article that says Ryan Gosling has your future haircut. Google those words if you want to read about it. This haircut is basically, it's almost like a messy, grown out buzz cut. It's kind of one length with just a little bit of structure hiding in there. It allows for the hair to grow out for 2 to 3 months without looking much different than it did when you first cut it. And that's kind of the key to a look like this. So to begin here, I'm going to take some diagonal back sections. And the reason I'm doing that is because Ryan's hair kind of leans diagonally back. There's a saying that section equals direction. So the way you want the hair to move is kind of the direction you want to take these sections. Now on the first two panels, I'm actually going to pull the hair back to cut it and over direct it. It's going to leave a little bit of extra length in the front, which is going to cause for some of that movement that we see in Ryan's hair. And then once I get behind those first two sections and I start cutting kind of over the ear and beyond, I'm not going to over direct the hair. I'm going to pull it straight out off the head. And this is going to cause it to be ever so slightly shorter than those first two sections I took in the front. Now, I want those sections a little bit longer in the front for a few reasons. First, you can see if you look at the parietal ridge here that there is a weight line that kind of dips down there. That dip is caused by that added length in the front, and that causes the weight line to kind of follow the shape of the head a little bit more. You can see that it kind of hugs the temple and follows the shape of his skull there. But also, you can see that little flip in front of the sideburn like we saw on Ryan's hair. So I'm going to continue taking these diagonal back sections all the way through the back of the head down to roughly the middle. Like once I get near the middle, I'll stop doing this. But what you can see is I'm taking the hair from the top of the head over the occipital bone and pulling it way out to meet my design line here. This is going to cause that weight line to build up around the back of the head, which just, again, emphasizes the skull shape and kind of like makes the haircut look like it's custom tailored fit to the head. And as you would imagine, what I do to the right side of the head, I'm going to go back and do to the left side. I don't like to kind of work from the right temple all the way around to the left temple because oftentimes by the time I get to the left temple, I no longer have the same shape or length that I started with in the first place. It's kind of like a game of telephone, like the last section guides this section, guides the next section. And eventually, if you're a little bit off, like sometimes you get over to the left temple and you find that you're way off. So when I get to the back of the head, I like to stop and go back to the left temple. So I'll start on the right temple, go to the back of the head, and then start on the left temple and go to the back of the head because I find that I get more consistency that way. And I did the same thing on this side where I over directed the front sections back to leave a little more length there. And once I got over the ear, I started pulling the hair straight out again. Now you'll see that some of the sections I'm taking here are a little bit thick, a little bit on the wide side. Because this is somewhat of a messy haircut, I can take more or less messy wide sections and get away with it. It just kind of adds to the movement in the haircut. And if I wanted a more clean, pristine haircut, I would take smaller, tidier sections. And so it's kind of like neat sections, neat haircut, messy sections, messy haircut. But, don't take that to mean that these sections are completely haphazard and random. You can see there's still some deliberate angles here. It's still like neatly put together. I'm just kind of taking bigger chunks because this is going to cause a little bit more variation in the lengths as the hair falls and moves and cascades down the back of the head. If I take smaller sections, then I'm going to get a more uniform, clean result, which results in less movement, can result in less movement, less separation. So again, you'll see here that over the occipital, I'm extending that hair way out to my design line because I want to leave that weight and that length over the top. Now, oftentimes when I'm doing diagonal back sections on the right and diagonal back sections on the left, and then they meet somewhere in the middle, oftentimes they don't meet evenly moving up the middle. And so I'll go back at times like I'm doing here and pull the hair out to kind of make sure the right connects to the left in a clean enough way. Now, before I even begin to want to refine this neckline, I'm going to get rid of the sort of neck fuzz underneath. And doing this is going to allow the hair to lay much more nicely. And it's going to give me a better idea of what the finished look is going to look like. You can see night and day difference there, like immediately after I shave that hair off. I'm going to allow that area to air dry a little bit before I continue to refine it because I want to see how the hair is going to act before I decide what to do with it. So now moving on to the top, I'm going to take a center section of hair running from the front to the back of the head. And traditionally, for most like men's haircuts, and I say that with air quotes, like traditionally masculine haircuts, you want to pull everything straight up and cut it parallel to the floor for a more square shape. But one of the things that makes this haircut kind of neat is it's a little bit rounded. It's a little bit soft. Again, kind of like a grown out buzz cut. Now, as I get to the back here, I am going to follow that more traditional square to the floor, like square shape to leave a stronger weight line over the occipital bone because I find that having more length there will actually allow the hair around the cowlick and the whorl to just like lay more nicely and it grows back a little more nicely. And so I think the kind of rounded shape from the front of the haircut looks cool, but a rounded back of the haircut, I think just looks like a bad haircut. And so I leave that kind of squareness around the occipital. And so now as I'm taking subsequent sections off of my center strip, I am going to pull everything straight out directly off of the head as though I were going to cut it round, but I am going to leave somewhat of a square shape with hard corners here because Ryan does in fact have some weight line around the parietal ridge there. But what I'm doing with this cutting technique, I think I've heard people call this punch cutting. I've heard other people call it like reverse point cutting or inverse point cutting, something like that. But basically this technique I'm doing here, I'm taking huge chunks of hair out and I'm kind of sculpting the shape to leave somewhat of a corner, but kind of a broken, hollow corner there. Like there's gonna be a lot of shards and pieces that could kind of extrude out to look like a corner. But at the same time, it's very gappy and holy. And here, as I work on the left corner of the head, you can see what I'm talking about a little bit more with this technique. It's like a cleaner camera angle of it here, but you can see that I'm taking the tip of the scissor in there and just pulling out pieces of hair like chunk, chunk, chunk. And the result is going to be very wispy and pointy and chunky. And at times, just based on how I'm standing and what's comfortable. And by the way, trying to cut this side of the head in front of the camera is not comfortable. I'll do some point cutting, like traditional point cutting. And in front here, I noticed just a couple random little long stray hairs. So I elevate the hair a little bit to cut those because if I pull it down, the hair is going to sit too heavy. If I pull it up, I kind of have to cut it 2 or 3 times to make sure I get the length right. But by pulling it straight out, I kind of find a happy medium there. So what I'm doing at this point is kind of shaking the hair around to see where it needs a little bit more, I don't know, zhuzhing up. Anything that I wiggle, if it just kind of falls down and it looks like a heavy wall of hair, I'm going to go in and break it up with some deep point cutting, which you can see me doing pretty extensively in the back here. When I was cutting the back of the hair, I didn't texturize it at all. And so that's kind of, I'm doing this like a two-step process. I'm texturizing the back now that I've got the shape in there. And again, anywhere that I wiggle the hair and see that it just falls like a wall of hair, I'm going to go in and point cut it. Moving on to the neckline here, he has that kind of hair that likes to flip out and do wings at the bottom. And so what I'm doing here is basically trimming off the hair at exactly the point where it decides to flip and go the wrong way. And so it's giving us a good flip that's hugging the head. And then that good flip is deciding to, just take it a little too far and or curve away from the head. And so I'm just trimming these at right about the point where they start curving away from the head. And the result is going to give us kind of a messy neckline that's going to hug his head here. Again, I'm moving the hair to look for heavy spots, and I noticed around the parietal ridge on the right side here, he did have a heavy area. So just like I did across the back, I'm going to go in and just break it up with some point cutting. So this is a haircut where, like, when I'm done, if I did it right, when you pick it up, you won't find a line anywhere. Like, there's no lines in the haircut, and that's kind of the key for this look. Is it has to just be it's not shapeless, but it's just everything is soft. So as you would imagine, to style hair like this, you probably shouldn't have to blow dry it. I'm going to go for some ADH dry here, available at adhbrand.com. And this is kind of this product. For the last 10 years, I've been making this. This is the name of the game with this product is like just messy, effortless, casual looks. It kind of just makes your hair look dirty. It looks like you didn't wash it. It gives it a little bit of that like lived in feel. If I were to be forced to blow dry this a little bit, like if I'm trying to get it camera ready, I would just take the blow dryer with high heat and high power, and by hand, I would kind of coerce the root in key areas to make sure that it's going exactly where I want it to go. But for day to day, like he shouldn't have to blow dry this, and I don't think he actually does. This guy's like in and out of the gym and doesn't want to spend a lot of time styling his hair. And so I think for the most part, he just kind of noogies some product in there and goes. But again, if I'm going to blow dry it, that's what I'm going to do. Is just kind of coerce the root in a few key areas to lay where I want it. So here's our result. It's not exactly identical to Ryan Gosling because we don't have Ryan Gosling in the chair, but you can see the vibe is very, very, very close. And I expect that, this haircut should last him probably 2 or 3 months. I'll see him in the chair again. And maybe next time we'll do something different and make another video about it. Thanks so much for watching. Please like and subscribe if you're into this sort of thing. I'm hoping to eventually start cranking these out about once a week.